politics. If you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chats, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So, that is what this show is here for. We are here to answer all of your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated. And this is a judgment free zone, so you don't got to worry about getting roasted or debated or anything like that. You can just ask me whatever you like. And so long as you're asking in good faith, you will get a good faith answer in response. Sometimes I get a little spicy with people in the comments if they're spicy at me, but most of the time I just try to answer as sincerely and um, objectively as I possibly can. So, yeah, I know that it can be weird to try to talk to people about politics in person because maybe the place that you live, there are people who would assume that you are more to the left or more to the right just based on the question that you asked. And sometimes people can be really judgy, based on getting that information from you. So, Supreme Alien Commander says, what do you think about cubes? They're all right. That's not really a question about politics, though. So, yeah, any questions about politics, just go ahead and ask me in the chat, everybody. And it can be as simple or as complicated as you like. Maybe you're somebody like me and you see what's going on and you want to know, like, what can we do to help? Is there even any hope going forward? And I can 100% talk on that. Maybe you're somebody on the right and you've always wondered why Democrats are the way that they are. Well, you got a real life Democrat sitting here that you can ask your questions to. I don't care if you're further to the left than me. I don't care if you're further to the right than me. You can ask me whatever you like, and you will get a dickhead answer in response. This is not one of those shows where I call people up and then we fight a whole bunch, and then we try to own each other, and then I call people stupid or anything like that. This is not that show. This is just me answering all of your good faith questions about politics with good faith answers. So, if you've always wanted to know what reconciliation is or continuing resolution, or if you don't know who Patel or Bondi or Buttigieg are, I can fill you in on all these characters. And if you don't know what the FTC or the FEC does, you can ask questions about that. There is no such thing as a dumb question. I don't believe in making fun of people for trying to learn new things about what's going on in the government. And I think it's important. I think it's important that people know what our government is doing. Sherilyn W. says, what's wrong with Trump's hand? Did you see the picture close up? I'm not really sure what's wrong with his hand. I'm not a doctor. He's old, though, and he has the diet of a 13-year-old, so I don't really know that it's anything more complicated than that. But thank you for your question, Sherilyn. I appreciate that. So, yeah, I think it's important for people to be informed. I think it's important for people to be, up to speed with what their government is doing and the mechanisms by which they do it. I think it's important that we have places that we can go where we're all working on parsing out all of the misinformation and propaganda that we are all being exposed to on the various social media channels and everything. And so, yeah, this is the place where you can ask all of those questions. Swiftly Engaged says, as a Texan, I'm really hoping California goes through with the redistricting. Yeah, I don't mind gerrymandering to combat Republican gerrymandering. And it's one of the reasons why I advocate people voting for Democrats and unelecting every Republican is because Democrats are the only party that seem at all willing to get rid of partisan gerrymandering and, pass a bill that says that only independent commissions are allowed to decide what the districts are going to be in various states, Gage says, Israel. What about Israel? Chapa says, what do you think will happen when the Epstein files get released? Do you think society will break? I don't think society will break. I just hope that a lot of people, regardless of how rich and powerful they are held accountable for their potentially illegal actions. Oh, excuse me. Vrazy GG says, what misinformation and propaganda are you speaking of specifically? I mean, there's a lot, V. Razy. My overall thesis around the goal of propaganda and misinformation is that, number one, it is intended to confuse. It is intended to get us to fight amongst themselves. It is intended to get people to vote for Republicans or to not vote at all. It is to convince people that the Republican Party is better than it is, and that the Democratic Party is worse than it is. It is covering and making sure that the Republican Party never gets any blame, and also making sure that the Democratic Party never gets any credit. Alrighty, Swiftly Engaged says, I'm really trying to push folks around me to understand we need to vote in change. That's great, Swiftly Engaged. Have you read The Persuaders by Anand Giridharadas? I highly recommend that book, especially for people that are in the that are boots on the ground and trying to do the work of convincing. Anime Demon King Lover says, do you think MAGA is a cult? I think that some people in the MAGA movement are behaving as though they're in a cult. Gage says, Epstein was Mossad. Thoughts? I mean, there's some, circumstantial evidence that he was connected to intelligence in one way or the other. You don't have to be Mossad in order to be a target of intelligence agencies. Like just the fact that he was wealthy and powerful and had potentially interacted with a bunch of wealthy and powerful people and had compromising information on them, every intelligence agency would potentially reach out to him, try to get his information, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't have to be in the intelligence agencies for him to be working with them. Let's see here. Thomas Kilpatrick says, unfortunately, Trump will overcome the files. He won't if we don't let him. It is up to us. Let's see here. Carmine says, who's that? That's Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Lamar says, can I join? I typically don't have people up, but if you stick around, ask a couple of questions, show me that you were here in good faith, then maybe I'll change my mind. Sherilyn W. says, what did Rosie O'Connell do to re-spark his rage against her? I don't really remember. I think maybe she said something like he's, a really shitty person or something. I think she put it up on Twitter. I don't know what it was. Andrew the Great says, which party is actively trying to disenfranchise my people from the country they made? The Republican Party. I don't even know. Unless you are a rich white person, the answer to that is the Republican Party. It's All Theater says, do you think the Dems lost some credibility trying to hide Biden's dementia? I think the narrative around Democrats trying to hide Biden's dementia is hurting the Democrats' credibility. But the fact is that narrative is inaccurate. And unless you read Jake Tapper's book about who knew what and when, then you also do not know if it was the Democratic Party, en masse, which it wasn't. It was individual actors, and the idea that everybody in the Democratic Party knew about this. All Democratic leadership was on board with the plot of hiding Biden's dementia is a wildly inaccurate narrative. But read the book. Read Jake Tapper's book. Charles Truitt says, Jake Tapper, LMAO. I mean, he's a reporter. I don't really know what you think is funny about that. One Love 4B says, give me declining, you understand, and can make a decision. He's not demented. What are you talking about? Are you talking about Biden? BJ says, LOL, I could do this all day. Stop skipping me. I didn't see your question, BJ. One Love 4B says he doesn't have to mention. Oh, you guys are, you say that he's declining or something. Yeah, sure. I don't really care. I'm not about this. I'm not about this fight. The Biden administration lowered healthcare costs. They supported the unions. They passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which brought the Trump inflation from 9% to 2.4%. It was the largest investment in green energy in our nation's history. I don't care if he was suffering from age-related decline. If that was what he was doing in decline, fucking give me 10 more years of that decline, please. I would rather vote for a dementia-ridden pile of bones that used to be Joe Biden than the Republican Party with what it is currently doing. All right. Internal Chaos says, should women approach first if they want to? Vrazy GT says, the Dems I've lost faith in as they can't clap for DJ Daniels and weaponize the Epstein files. Is DJ Daniels that kid that Trump paraded on to the stage during his State of the Union while at the same time he was cutting funding for children's cancer research? Is that who DJ Daniels is? And as far as weaponizing the Epstein client files, I don't know if you're talking about that like it's a good thing or a bad thing, but they're calling for the release of the Epstein files, and Republicans are blocking it. Democrats don't have the majority in Congress, so it's not like, what do you want them to do, Special Case says, what if I'm too lit to politic? Well, just, I don't know, drink some water, wait a couple hours. David Cole Vites 452 says, I think it's going to be a long time for the Democratic Party's is in office again, nobody trusts them. I trust them. Let's see here. Siggy G says, you look like Jiri. I don't know who that is. Flaming Mo, great to see you again. How come no one cares about egg prices anymore? Well, there's a lot of misinformation about what is going on with egg prices, you know. Egg prices are going up, they're going down. Bird flu, I think, has subsided a little bit, and so maybe producers are able to put more eggs out there, and then maybe that actually did make the price of eggs go down. But inflation is whoop, oh no, I lost my camera over on the Twitch stream. I gotta. All right, we're back. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is there. Price going up though. Inflation is going up though. This is all Trump's fault. Tariffs are stupid, you know. Air Rick says you trust them because you're paid to. No, I'm not. Charles Truitt says I know after White House Biden will never blow blue again in my short life left. Why, Charles? Didn't you think Biden and his administration did a good job? FL5 says, why does Israel own us? They don't. If you would like me to go into more detail on that, I will. Frazee says, used a bill they wanted passed and attached it to the Epstein file so Republicans would block it. That's not what happened, Frazee GT. M. Barrera says, Jarrett, what do you think about TT being taken over by Oracle? I don't know anything about that. You talk about TikTok is being taken over by Oracle? I don't know what that is. Ricky Boy says, do you think we will have a blue wave in 26? That we will if we do the work to make it happen, Ricky Boy. People like you and me, you know. Charles Truitt says, oh my God, yep, the worst POTUS ever. I disagree. I think Trump is doing a way worse job than Biden. Do you not think so, Charles? I find that really weird that that is your opinion, you know. Like, and I can argue this 10 ways from Sunday, but what do you think Biden did bad, you know? Ziggy Paul says, why do they want billions? Why does who want billions? Amber says, join the People's Sick Day movement. I'm on board. Wonder Woman Enlightenment says, Israel controls the U.S. No, it doesn't. Ziggy Paul says, it's not for free. They do shit behind closed doors like 9/11. What the fuck are you talking about, Ziggy Paul? Let's see here. Lionheart says, why do we keep giving money to Israel? I don't know. You know, I know why Trump is. It's because he's a racist and he likes the fact that Israel is whiter than the surrounding countries. He's an authoritarian like Netanyahu, and they tend to work together on things. I don't know why the Democrats did. They were probably just scared of all the AIPAC money being used against them in primaries and stuff like that. Flamingo Mo says, do you know anything about our energy prices and when they will go up? When? I do not know. They will 100%. I just don't know when. And there's going to be brownouts and stuff like that, and a bunch of people are going to lose their jobs. You know. All right. Quia Girl says, waiting for Dems with power to actually use that power to fight, but they don't have power right now. Quia Girl. If you want Dems to do something, then you need to vote for them. Scott Clower says, Jeff Yass, a major TikTok investor, gave Trump bail money. Oh, isn't that interesting? Charles Truitt says, we had no one cross the border in Maine, zero crossed. Charles, that is inaccurate. You know, you said something, a word. Did you respond to my thing, Charles, about what you thought Biden did wrong? So you didn't respond to my thing about what you thought Biden did wrong. You just said that we had no one cross the border in May. Zero people crossed, which is impossible. That there's no way that that happened, Charles. I think you maybe are not getting your news from accurate sources. Vivo says, do you have an opinion on them automatic speeding ticket cameras? I mean, you know, I guess it's important that we hold people accountable if they're driving unsafely, I guess. Sorry, my opinion on automatic speeding ticket cameras is that more people should use public transportation. Sorry for tomorrow. Good to see you again. Vote blue, and it's time for regular people like us to start running for office. Completely agree with that. Random Clips, LOL, says, why do people get defensive when you say you hate Trump? I don't know. You know, I think that people have put a lot of value into their identity as being Trump fans. And so when they feel like when you attack him and the things that he's done, then you are attacking them. Or maybe they feel like, you know, I don't know, maybe they feel like they've been sold a bill of goods saying that people who dislike Trump are bad people. And so they need to fight us in every way that they possibly can, you know? Tim, the RV tech, says, if I was kicked out of 109 bars, would it be my fault? Most likely. Wonder Woman Enlightenment says, yes, AIPAC supports Dems and Republicans. Yes, but they are a far right-wing organization. So they will support centrist Dems over progressive Dems, but they will also support any Republican over any Democrat. All right. Charles Truitt says Dow watch up 257. All right, you're not here in good faith, Charles. Time to see you later, buddy. Done with your trolling. All right. Culprit Knight says Trump said Democrats wrote the Epstein files, so we should forget about them? Question mark. You know, he's lying. I still think that we should try to get him. I think it's so weird that he is trying to block them. Like, why, sir? Why? Is it because you spent a lot of time with Epstein and you guys were buddies and you potentially did whole bunch of statutory grapes and PDF files with him? All right. Tim the RV tech says, "What does the Talmud say about Jesus?" I have no idea. Let's see here. Random Clips LOL says, "What is your opinion on Charlie Kirk?" Charlie Kirk is a liar. He is a bullshit artist. He knows he's full of shit. He is lying to people in order to make money and increase his own clout and spread. He is completely full of shit. He is harmful to the culture, to the country, and yeah, nobody should listen to anything that he has to say. M Dash says, it's not an M Dash, just a regular dash. Says, do you think the Superman movie was political? I think James Gunn actually said that he made it political intentionally. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. Let's see here. Kwai Girl says there are powerful Dems: Clinton's, Pelosi, Obama, Pritzker. Kia is pronounced Kia. All right, sorry about that, Kia Girl. None of those people that you mentioned have any political power right now. Pelosi is not even the minority leader anymore. It's Hakeem Jeffries. Obama is out of office. Pritzker is a governor. You know, and the governors they do what they can, but you know, it really is Trump, you know, consolidating power in all three branches of the government, and there are no adults in positions of power who have any mechanism of stopping him. Let's see here. Speedy Gonzalez says, "Thank you, Joe Biden, for destroying the Epstein client list to protect Hollywood and Clinton." That didn't happen, Speedy Gonzalez. I don't care for that kind of propaganda and misinformation on my channel. So see you later. All right, scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. Tim, the RV tech says, "What are the top safest states in the USA?" I don't know exactly which they are, but I guarantee you that they're mostly blue states. Sorry for Tomorrow says, "We don't care the party of those on the list. We want to hold those accountable regardless of party." That is accurate. Random Clips LOL says, "Trump trying to run for president again after his term. I thought he can't do that." So it is blatantly unconstitutional for him to try to run for a third term. And so I don't know how he's going to try, but he is going to try to stay in office until he's dead. Like, that is, there, you know, I would bet the house on that. And so will he try to petition the Supreme Court or Congress, or will he declare martial law and cancel elections or some shit like that? I don't know what he's going to do, but that is what his motivation is. Alrighty. Glory and 8hammer says he's breaking laws. He doesn't care. That is accurate. Carmine says Biden was a waking mailbox. So why didn't he put the files out? I'm confused. Yeah, me too, Carmine. M says MAGA is trash. The MAGA movement is trash, but we need to have radical empathy for every voter because we are all part of the 99%. And we need to recognize that the people who are ruining our lives are not other voters. It is the billionaire class and the Republican Party that is working with them. James Cobell says, "Now I can barely hear it at all." I think you're the only one, James. I think you might be spamming in the comments. Let's see here. Look Video says, "Top safest state is New Zealand." That's not a state in America. Sorry for Tomorrow says, "I don't know why the right can't understand that the left calls out their own when they do bad." Because they are in an information bubble that is telling them that we are all hypocrites who only want to punish people on the right, and you know, every accusation is a confession. Dean says, "Do you think Joe Biden was a good president?" I do. I don't think he was perfect, but I think he was a pretty good president. One of the most progressive agendas and accomplishments since FDR. Atlanta 76 just said Trump 28, and that's the kind of thing that gets you blocked. I don't care if you have different opinions than me, but actually ask a question, be part of the conversation. JD Ben 66 says thoughts on ICE. ICE is a rogue organization that is operating unconstitutionally and illegally. They are ignoring everybody's rights as citizens and legal residents. They have detained and deported veterans, citizens, Native Americans, legal residents, people who have done exactly zero crimes, people whose only crime has been like jaywalking and shit like that. They have deported people to countries that are not their country of origin. They have sent people to concentration camps, both here and in other countries that are run by brutal dictators like El Salvador, they need to be fucking disbanded. It is the corruption, the vileness, the barbarism is fucking deep in ICE. They gotta go. Priutus says thoughts on the Epstein list. I think it's super weird that Trump is trying to hide it. James Coble says, I'm going to power it down and turn it back on. That sounds like the move, man. Cirque Lee says, you look like Felix from Chapo Trau's house. Look up Felix. Nah, you just tell me if he's attractive, and I'll take it as a compliment or not. Kalicha says, what is your take on the Dignity Act? Oh, actually, I have not heard anything about the Dignity Act, but I'll give it a Google. Cooper Durgan says, thoughts on J.D. Vance? He's a liar and an opportunist. He completely went against all of his fucking values so that he could pray at the altar of Donald Trump so that he could help his political career and potentially run for president in the future. He fucking sucks. He's a liar. He should never have any amount of governmental power ever again in his entire life. Let's see here. M says Trump supporters are made up of uneducated people. Okay, so M, there are two things about that. Number one is that statistically, you are correct. People who vote Republicans tend to be either uneducated or undereducated, people that don't have their college degree or high school diploma. But that does not make them worse people. It doesn't make them stupider people. It doesn't make them more gullible. But maybe there are things that you get when you get an education that make it so that you are less susceptible to believing conspiracy theories and things like that. I believe in practicing radical empathy. So even if these are people who are hurting us with their vote, it is not their fault that they were born into that community, into that information environment, stuck in that bubble. There, but for the grace of God, go I. And potentially, if you were born into that family, going to that church, watching that Facebook news feed, potentially you would believe those things as well. And there are plenty of people on the left that got tricked into not voting in the last election. Kia Girl says, can blue states withhold funding for red state programs? So short answer, yes, but it is legally precarious thing to do. So we can stop withholding federal income tax from everybody's pay stubs. We cannot pay the federal government back grant money that they, that they gave us with the intention of us paying them back. There are like a bunch of mechanisms by which we can not send the federal government money. There's the issues with that though are that it is likely to be overturned by the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court is extremely right-wing and doing the bidding of the Trump administration, allowing him to be a dictator. It is if blue states start withholding money from the federal government technically has the ability to stop sending blue states way more money than blue states have the ability to stop sending to the federal government. So yeah, it's possible but precarious. More of a messaging thing, I think, than anything. All right. Look Video says, how come no one is sus about the money Obama gave to Iran? Well, the money that Obama gave to Iran was part of the JCPOA. It was technically not America's money. It was Iran's money that we were just freezing. So there's nothing sus about it. It was part of a nuclear deal that was intended to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. And it was doing that until Trump threw it in the garbage because he was racist and he didn't like things that had Obama's name on it. Mindless Matter says, why didn't Biden release the Epstein list? So Biden maintained the separation between the White House and the Department of Justice that every president is supposed to do. It is only authoritarian fascists like Donald Trump that are trying to control every lever of power in the government, which is the opposite of what America's whole fucking deal is. We're supposed to have delegation and separation of powers and checks and balances and shit like that. So it was up to the director of the FBI, whatever information he wanted to release about Epstein, and the director of the FBI from the Trump administration all the way through to the new Trump administration was a Republican appointed by Donald Trump named Christopher Wray. So if you'd like to know why the Republican Christopher Wray, who was appointed by Republican President Donald Trump, did not release the Epstein list and then was fired by Donald Trump and replaced with Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, who are also not replacing the Epstein list, then I think you need to ask Christopher Wray why he did that, and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. But Biden didn't have anything to do with that. Random Clips, LOL, says, but if his wife does something bad, he won't deport her, so what's the point of this? Are you talking about Trump not deporting Melania or some shit? Evanora says, "Who do you think Europe should? How do you think Europe should react to the rise of immigrant gangs and violence?" So I don't know how accurate it is that immigrants are doing more violence and starting gangs in Europe. The same way that it is misinformation to say that immigrants are doing that in America. But I don't know what's going on in Europe. I don't live in Europe. Mm. I will say this, that right wing actors oftentimes will spread misinformation and propaganda saying that marginalized groups of people need to be put under the boot because they're doing a whole bunch of, oh, this, what a little cute little hat I got. Because they're doing a bunch of crimes and, rapes and shit like that. And so, yeah, you just need to be really skeptical of all those claims because it is the billionaire class pointing the finger and saying, look, those poor people who are struggling and who had to leave a war zone to survive, they're the reason why your life sucks. It's not the fact that I'm poisoning the water and the air with chemical runoffs from my factories and I am choosing to pay you the absolute bare minimum and I am buying up all the houses to make it so that y'all have to be renters for your entire fucking life. All right, James Cobell. You pay all this money for technology, then it doesn't work. James, if you keep on spamming the comments, I'm going to block you. Evan Norris says you should check the EU news. There's civilians uprising, not billionaires. Evan Nora, again, I'm extremely skeptical. American politics is my specialty. So if you want people to confirm your priors about immigrants being violent in Europe, you should probably go somewhere else. Culprit Knight says California Governor Gavin Newsom challenged the borders are to arrest him instead of little girls. Yeah, that's true. Let's see here. Tiger Santana 55 says bring back the Bull Moose Party. I don't know too much about the Bull Moose Party, but I think the Democrats are a totally fine option. Noah Wallace says, do you think we'll see a shift in the Republican Party in the future where they support green? No, I do not. So the Republican Party is owned by the billionaire class, and a lot of those billionaires are heavily invested in fossil fuels, and so no, they will never go green. Manny Alberta says, who will win in 28? I don't know, but I think that we should do the work to make Democrats win in 26. Cause 808, it's good to see you again. What do you think of Israel attacking Syria? Was this unprovoked? Israel attacked Syria? Oh my God. I forgot to Google that yesterday. Oh shit. Yeah, I didn't know anything about that, man. That is fucking infuriating, man. I got to give that a Google because so sorry about that. Kyle Forlick says, how do you feel about Emil's nomination? Emil who? User a whole bunch of numbers says, you are a leftist and you don't pay attention to what is not good for you. I mean, I pay attention to everything, my guy. Justin Hanging Around Love says, this guy gets paid to spread propaganda. No, I don't. JAL says, why do evangelicals have such an outsized influence on U.S. politics? I would say probably propaganda, misinformation. The Republican Party has kind of like been investing in creating this culture of being a Republican. These sort of like identity politics issues that the Republican Party keeps on forwarding to make it seem like American equals Christian equals Republican, and anything that isn't in there is sus or bad. But yeah, the Republican Party recognized that it was a valuable voting base, and they recognized that, they could convince people to be fine with eating shit so long as they were promised eternal life in the eternal heaven in the afterlife and shit like that. Yeah, it's manipulation tactics and stuff like that, and it's a real fucking bummer. Post-punk freak says, is communism the way forward for the working class of America? So I don't know because we've never seen a country that has been actually communist or socialist. So we don't know what that system would look like. But what we do have is little pieces of both communism and socialism in mixed civilization models, So like there is capitalism and socialism and communism here in America and abroad. It's just that certain countries have a little bit more socialism, a little more communism, a little less capitalism here and there. And I think that America needs to have a little less capitalism because it's fucking ruining everything, Hendrix Hoyt says, do you think the Democratic Party is as corrupt or plainly corrupt as the Republican Party seems? The Democratic Party is nowhere near as corrupt as the Republican Party. The individual politicians aren't as corrupt, and the platform isn't as corrupt. They don't have a history of doing as much corruption. They are not allowing as much corruption as the Republican Party is currently allowing. The Democratic Party was in power when they discovered that Senator Menendez was getting fucking gold bars from the government of Egypt, and they were like, all right, yeah, fuck that guy, and now he's on his way to jail. Whereas the Republican Party is watching Trump have a fucking crypto coin, is watching him get fucking planes from the Qataris, and, you know, he's fucking selling Trump shoes and perfume and shit like that while he's president of the fucking United States. And he's trying to influence Jerome Powell to lower interest rates so he can borrow more money to invest in his fucking companies while he's president of the United States. And the Republican Party is in control of Congress. They are in control of the judiciary. They could stop this, and they are not. There has never been a more blatant and wild example of governmental corruption than what is happening right now, and the Republican Party is letting it happen. Similarly, there were things that the Democrats tried to do during the Biden administration to make it easier to stop corruption, and the Republican Party filibustered it at every step of the way. All right, Dr. Love says they're both corrupt to the core. That is inaccurate. Beck's in Progress says, where is your outrage against the Islamic regime that massacred occurred the Druze people? I don't know what you're talking about, Beck's in Progress, but I am equally outraged against every massacre. All right. Rum says, LMAO, just another lying liberal. I'm not lying. Triska says, why isn't the ICC investigating the Trump administration for human rights violations? But they potentially are. I don't know. It won't really have a lot of weight because America does not recognize the authority of the ICC. It didn't during the Biden administration either. But they are potentially, you know, building a case against him. I'm not really sure. Alrighty, let's see here. User a bunch of numbers says, how is genocide by a country convicted? I'm not 100% sure what the process is, but I do know that the ICC, the International Criminal Court, and the UN, the United Nations, they both have standards that must be met before a genocide is declared. And what those standards are, I'm not 100% sure. How they prove that, I'm not 100% sure, but like that's their, you know, that's their purview, you know. Let's see here. Jamie Ironricker says, could Trump be selling protection to people on the Jeffrey Epstein list? Yeah, potentially. You know, he sells pardons to people. He might as well fucking sell protection for the Jeffrey Epstein shit. I think it's so much more likely that he is incriminated in those documents. All of the circumstantial evidence points to them being really good buddies who were on the plane together a lot, who were, you know, who were hanging out with underage women a lot. You know, Trump said in an interview or something, he was reported that he said that he was more attracted to his daughter when she was 13 years old than his daughter's mother or something like that. So yeah, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire where that's concerned. And he's the one that's blocking it, you know, so it just makes sense to me. Maverick says, Democrats brought it and the Republicans shut it down so fast. I'm not really sure what you mean by that, Maverick. Lovely says, are you going to bring anyone up? Nobody wants to hear you yap. I mean, I got like 150 people watching, so those people clearly do. Nunya says, so you don't think politicians like Pelosi, Kerry, Gore, the list goes on, are invested in big oil? No, I never said that. I think that the Republican Party is way more heavily enmeshed in fossil fuels than the Democratic Party. The Republican Party's platform is to continue to subsidize fossil fuels and to put their finger on the scale to hurt the green energy revolution. And that's the opposite with the Democratic Party. So I don't really give a shit if Pelosi or Kerry are investing in fossil fuels. How are they litigating? You know, they passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which was the largest investment in green energy in our nation's history. And it would have gone even further to curbing fossil fuels if it hadn't been for Joe Manchin, who's a fucking coal lobbyist or some shit. Mia's LV Adventure says the Republican Party doesn't care about the environment. They're going to destroy the world. That is accurate. Maverick says we should talk about how the Republican GOP shut down the forced release of the Epstein files quick. We should talk about that. Love God says Trump on Kamala. Why are you asking me Trump versus Kamala? That's really weird. The election was over a long time ago. Fogor Productions, great to see you again. Yeah, I'm just kind of tired of the GOP using my shoulder blades as a knife block. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Alrighty, let's see here. Cat Daddy says we should have known that conspiracies would be the perfect tool to get them against him. Yeah, I mean, I've heard people talk about that in the past. So yeah, I'm not mad at that outcome there. Sorry for tomorrow says don't try and hide Israel's crimes behind the fact that others doing wrongdoing too. I believe that is a comment that is directed toward Bex in Progress. Bex in Progress, it seems to me like you are somebody who stands for the government of Israel. And if you would like to engage on that in good faith, I am happy to. Scrolling down to the bottom, Maverick says all of the Republicans of the GOP need to be investigated. This stuff is deplorable. I got one better for you, Maverick. Why don't you join me in the project of unelecting every single Republican from president to dog catcher? Why don't you join me in that work? You know, because once they're out of office, then they can be held legally liable. Once Democrats are in office, we can start to make changes to the judiciary to make it so that the rich, powerful, and connected are held accountable for their crimes the same way that poor people and brown people are. Alrighty. Red Ear says Netanyahu's a war criminal and should be behind bars in The Hague. I agree with that. Fog War Production says the government collects royalties off of fossil fuels in the form of mineral leases. Probably. I don't know if that's accurate. Anthony De Laredo says a vote for Trump was a vote to go backwards, not forwards. That is accurate. Carmine says, will you laugh like this at my funeral? If you want me to. Here lies Carmine, everybody. Now, who wants to hear me talk about how billionaires have been manipulating the information sphere so that they can elect Republicans and dismantle the government so they don't have to pay taxes and can poison us all with the air that we breathe and the water and the fucking chemical runoff? People are going to love your funeral, man. Let's see here. The Fog War Production says the truth is that the U.S. government makes a lot of money off of fossil fuels. Fog War Productions, I don't know if that is accurate. I only know that one party is trying to make it so that we can have clean, safe energy going forward, revitalizing small towns with clean, safe energy jobs. And one party is doing the opposite. One party is doubling down on fossil fuels while the fucking China is fucking lapping us on this. Alrighty, scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. Little Lee says, and I'm feeling like, what is the point if they are dismantling the Department of Education? So Little Lee, bigger point there, I think, is that the people in power, the Republican Party, the billionaire class, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, like all those fucks, they want you to be hopeless. They want you to give up. They want you to think, what's the point of doing anything? So I say, don't give them the gift of your giving up. Don't give them the gift of your pessimism. Your hope is resistance, you know? And so these people are fucking, they got a dozen mansions and private jets and mega yachts. They're eating lobster and caviar 3 meals a day. They do not get to have my hopelessness on top of all that. Don Hamburger says, I'm an English teacher in Florida. We are doomed. We are only doomed if people don't do the work, Dom. All right. Kitchen Shovels 2023 says, why didn't the Democratic Party release the Epstein files? I feel like both parties are full of shit. So Kitchen Shovels, just to be very clear about this, if there are notable, prominent Democrats on the Epstein list, like, send them to jail too. I don't give a fuck. I am not beholden to any politician. They are there to work for us. Now, that being said, the Biden administration was not in control of the Epstein list during his administration. The Biden administration was maintaining the separation between the White House and the judiciary. That is what the White House is supposed to do. And it is wildly unethical and authoritarian that Donald Trump is trying to control the levers of the Department of Justice while he is president. That being said, the person who was in control of the Epstein files during the Biden presidency is the same person that was in charge of the Epstein files during the last half of the Trump presidency. It was a Republican named Christopher Wray, who was appointed by Donald Trump during his first administration. And so if you want to know why the Republican nominated by Trump in charge of the FBI, Christopher Wray, did not release the Epstein files ever, either during the Trump administration or during the Biden administration, then you will have to ask Christopher Wray, who was appointed by Donald Trump and who was a Republican. Maverick says, we want everyone held accountable. That is accurate. Little Lee says, thank you for this live. We'll tune in again next time I can. Thank you, Little Lee. Appreciate you being here. Nunya says, China, Russia, India, and countless other countries have no concerns for the environment. That is inaccurate, Nunya. China is investing massively in green energy because they recognize that that's the future, because they recognize that that's going to make their country stronger, better, more technologically advanced. It's going to make their citizens healthier. It's better financially. It's basically free energy. Like the overhead on green technology is substantially lower than the overhead of drilling for oil and then the fucking cleaning up the toxins and shit like that. So yeah, they are doing the smart thing. They are going to be kicking our ass for the next like 2 decades because the Trump administration is fucking driving us in the opposite direction, you know? All right. You are out of here, my man. I don't allow for that nonsense on my live stream. Martin Seeger, 117 says specifically the Fifth Amendment, Clause 1, a right to a grand jury. I have a question. Why are states not bound by the U.S. Constitution? Martin Seeger, this feels like a question for like a constitutional law professor. There are differences between federal law and state law. There are certain examples where federal law supersedes state law, but there are also examples of state law, sort of like operating around federal law, like the fact that there are certain states where it is, it is legal to garden, if you get my drift, and while that is still federally illegal. All right, ADD over on Twitch says, any relation to the Berenstein Bears? No relation, but thank you for being here, ADD. Lauren, great to see you again. I like how you always pop into my live streams. It's this big fucking surprise. Like, I'm here every weekday at the exact same fucking time. You could be here, Alrighty, let's see here. Fog War Productions. Think of mineral lease as a very important tax on fossil fuel companies. All right, yeah, I'll look more into this. Fog War Productions. Cameron Hodge says, did Trump throw away food for overseas reserves? Yes, he did. The Trump administration threw away a bunch of food that we had already bought that was supposed to go to starving children in other countries. And instead of actually giving those starving kids that food or send them to another country that had starving kids, they just decided to burn it all, which was a fucking massive waste of money and was barbaric. It was stupid stupid and mean and evil on every fucking level. Martin Seeger says, so states are sovereign in some ways, and in some ways they are not. Martin Seeger, again, I am not the person to ask this question to. I am not a constitutional law professor who really gets into the nitty-gritty of what counts as a federal statute versus a state statute and which has precedence, ADD says, were y'all related before the Berenstein Bears changed their names? No, we were not. Maverick says, remember the 2008 collapse? Well, he's putting through legislation to ease up the banks again. Yeah, that's fucking exciting. Can't wait for the fucking stock market to crash again, Let's see here. Lauren says, how many women came forward about Trump walking into the dressing room? That I don't know, but I do know that over 24 women accused him of rape. And one of them said that she was 13 years old at the time. Alrighty. Let's see here. Martin Seeger says, what about Article 6 of the Supremacy Clause? Yeah, excellent question, Martin Seeger, for you to ask somebody else. Colin says, how do you feel about day traders? Are they the bad guys? I don't know if day traders are the bad guys, but I do know that it's basically gambling. Day trading is Vegas. Cameron Hodge says, if Biden would have dropped out sooner and had a primary, do you believe Democrats would have won? I don't know. I think that was probably the kill stroke for Democrats in 2024. I think that Harris ran a great campaign. There was a primary, but just, Biden won the primary. But he definitely 100% should have dropped out. I think that the election was close enough that I think a Democrat could have run away with it if Biden had dropped out and we had a primary. Even if Biden had dropped out earlier, Harris could have potentially taken it. Let's see here. Fog War Productions says, the feds then sent a cut of mineral lease back to communities like mine for basic needs and funding. Okay. Let's see here. YT Narco says, had to change laws to charge him. What are you talking about? Let's see here. Cameron Hodge says, should Bernie run in 27? I like Bernie a lot, but he's too old. I've had it up to fucking here with these old people, Let's have some fucking new blood in the government. ADD says, will there ever be an investigation into Nord Stream 2? That's an excellent question, ADD. I'm actually not up on that. So if you would like me to talk about it tomorrow, I will. I'll give it a Google. Let's see here. But send me like a DM or email me through my website so that I can remember. All right, Mercy870 says, I was on the New York financiers list, but I swear it was only for snorkeling and blackjack. I feel like you were here yesterday, Mercy, making the exact same joke. Cameron Hodge says, thought on Andrew Yang, I supported him in 2020. I understand the appeal of Andrew Yang, but to me, he always feels like a very unserious person. Like, you know, I think he has good intentions. I love the idea of universal basic income. I love the idea of a value tax. But he's not doing the work. Like, he's not doing the legwork of building up, enough support to actually run for president. Like, maybe start on the state and local level, Andrew Yang. Like, it's a little egotistical and it's a little unproductive to immediately jump to running for president. All right, Carmen says, are you caught up on the Arizona rep run? No, I am not. Tamara says, wasn't Trump supposedly bringing back 5.1 trillion for the Middle East? I think I heard that rumor as well, but I'm pretty sure it is nonsense. Carmen says also, how were the tacos? The tacos were great. Amari says, was Epstein an Israeli operation? I don't believe that he was. It's always felt a little bit like an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory to suggest that he was. I will say that just because he didn't work for Mossad does not mean that he was not connected to intelligence agencies like Mossad or the CIA or the KGB or whatever. Alrighty, Matthew Wilkins says, we clean house in the government. I would like to see term limits. I would like that too, but the only party that's going to vote for term limits is the Democratic Party. So a lot of these electoral reforms that people want to see so that we can get rid of old people like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, you have to vote for Democrats in order to make that happen, because the Republican Party is hostile to those kinds of changes, because those kinds of changes threaten them holding on to power. All right. Cameron Hodge says, is Florida and Texas going to redistrict to gain more GOP seats? It seems as though they are. I don't know what the legal challenges are going into that, but it seems like that's what their intention is, at least. Nunya says, your thoughts on Biden's presidency, his or someone else's? So I'm not an insider, so I don't know how much of the Biden presidency was him making decisions versus his administration making decisions. I also haven't read Jake Tapper's book yet. That apparently is a deep dive onto who knew what about Biden's mental decline. I will just say this: whether it was Biden or the people that Biden appointed to be in the government with him, they fucking nailed it. Like, they did a great fucking job. There are things that they did that I think were abhorrent, but there is a laundry list, a mile long, of things that they did that should have won Democrats the 2024 election, regardless of everything else that was going on. So yeah, if that's what a fucking dusty old dementia-ridden pile of bones does, fucking give me some more, please. Maverick says, we need to be more aggressive. I agree with that. Let's see here. Cameron Hodge says, what is your opinion on the auto pen use? It's a red herring. Every politician uses the auto pen. It is not any indication that he was, not that he didn't know what he was doing or that he was forced to doing things. Cameron Hodge says, I voted for Biden, but if his doctor or staff covered up his decline, they should be held accountable. Completely agree with that. Have you read Jake Tapper's book yet, Cameron? Because he talks about all that stuff, Mercy870 says, is there anything that can combat the genuine rise in anti-Semitism? I'm pro-Palestine, but still. I feel the exact same way as you, Mercy870. And the issue that we have right now is that we are giving attention and money and political power to people who are benefiting from anti-Semitism. And we need to stop doing that. We need to be part of the coalition of people that stops doing that. And so when you have somebody like Mamdani versus Cuomo, and Cuomo is blatantly trying to use the idea of anti-Semitism to gain political power, we need to vote for Mamdani instead. We need to punish the Republican Party electorally for smearing people as being anti-Semitic, for protesting for the rights of the people of Palestine. We need to elect politicians who are not going to be beholden to AIPAC, because that perpetuates anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. It is all about who we put forward as our representatives. And right now, the people are voting for bad people who are profiting off of anti-Semitism, both in the literal sense and the metaphorical sense. Yeah, it just all comes down to who's in charge, Cameron Hodge, 35, says, did you see where Biden said he didn't know every name he pardoned or commuted on his last days? Yeah, because some of those groups were massive. Like, you'll put a list down that's like, these are all non-violent drug offenders that your committee has put together, and they are serving time in states where the drugs are now illegal that they were arrested for, And so Biden did not, read every single one of those names. It is a perfectly valid and normal thing. I guarantee you Donald Trump didn't know the name of every fucking January 6er that he pardoned. Let's see here. Cameron Hodge says, do you support Trump sending more weapons to Ukraine and have to try and find some good in bad? Yes, I do, but all he's doing is maintaining the Biden era policy. Like, he's not escalating. He's just stopping the being in the way of helping the Ukraine. And I don't believe that he has good intentions either. I think he's just pissed at Vladimir Putin for doing this shit all out in the open. He thinks it makes it look bad or something. There's a lot of the problem with authoritarians is that they end up doing these fucking, dick measuring contests against each other, and so they will legislate and they will govern based on, can I assert more dominance over the authoritarians in other countries, Mercy 870 says, why do you think people are so drawn to racism and anti-Semitism? It's so sad to see. I don't know. I mean, the Jewish people they're a minority, and they're an other, and so any minority group, it's really easy to scapegoat them because, when we're looking for people to blame, our natural inclination is to blame people who are different than us. And so, yeah, it's easy. It's a very old religion, and so it's easy to ascribe, like long-term conspiracy theories like that went all the way back to Mesopotamia. They've been in control ever since Mesopotamia and shit like that. They were working with the aliens and crap like that, yeah, like if you look at Orthodox communities, like some of those traditions seem really strange and foreign. So, it just kind of lends this idea. And there are a lot of very, notable Jewish people who have succeeded in entertainment and finance and and in various powerful agencies. So, where people look and see, oh, this small marginalized group of people has somehow managed to amass a lot of power and wealth. Like, how the fuck did that happen? Shit like that. But yeah, it's all bullshit. Right. Cameron Hodge says, what do Democrats need to win the primaries? Democrats need people like us to do the work, Cameron, because they can't do it by themselves. They don't have the resources. The information environment has been captured by the billionaire class and the Republican Party. The Republican Party has access to all of the billionaires' limitless amount of campaign cash, and campaign cash from authoritarian nations like Russia. And so there's no way for them to combat that on their own. The advantage that the Democratic Party has is people, is individual human beings. There's more of us than there are of them. And so if individual people like you and me on the left want to unelect every Republican and get better, smarter people in those positions, get Democrats in those positions, then we have to do the work to make that happen. And we need to recruit other people to do that work as well. Because I can't do this all by myself. You can't do this all by yourself. And the more people that do the work, the less work we all have to do, which is another added benefit to that. But yeah, that's the only way that we break through the information environment being the way it is. It can't be posting because, again, the billionaires have full capture of the information environments. Alrighty, user 68 says Stephen Miller. Don't say his name 3 times; he'll show up. All right, over on Twitch, we got a bunch of people. Let's see here. ADD says, in regard to Nord Stream, Biden may have used AutoPen on it. Dude, prior to the mysterious pipeline destruction, flat out admitted the U.S. would blow up such. The U.S. ran test ops on the pipeline as security for a terrorist attack and then exploded, but no one knows who did it. ADD, I'm going to be honest, so just reading a little bit about this. This seems very propaganda, misinformation-y to me, but I'll look into it. I will. X Wheels X says, so at what point does peace discussions go to the wayside? We have been seeing they have 60 days to come to the table and they don't. What should the solution is there? So yeah, that's a difficult question to parse out because of the words that you used. But what point does peace discussions go to the wayside? When do we stop? I'm guessing what you're asking is like, when do we stop trying to get peace between Russia and Ukraine? And I guess my answer to that would be never. You know, like we should always be, you know, on the side of peace and trying to advance peace, even if it means, you know, wasting our breath talking to brick walls like, you know, Vladimir Putin, who is just going to keep on doing war as long as he can. Yeah, you know, after 60 days and Vladimir Putin doesn't stop, you know, we're just going to keep on sending weapons to Ukraine. And then, you know, hopefully the people in Russia will recognize the sacrifice that they're making and stand up to their dictator president. ADD says, pretty sure the footage of Biden admitting he would blow up Nord Stream is even on YouTube for all the covering up done on it. Pretty sure Biden just flat out forgot what was top secret at the time. Yeah, again, ADD, this sounds a little conspiracy theory-ish to me. So, but I'll check it out, you know. Thank you for being here regardless. Cameron Hahn says, what is your opinion on Marco Rubio? I believe he has the best interest at heart regardless of Trump. You know, God bless your heart, Cameron, for still believing that at this point. But Marco Rubio has gone out there and carried water for the Trump administration. He has betrayed every one of his fucking principles. It's pathetic what he has done. The way that he used to fucking rant and scream about what his priorities were, and he has just gone back on all of them to pray at the altar of fucking Trump and MAGA. And he's got like 5 jobs right now, while a fucking real estate developer named Steve Witkoff is actually traveling around the globe being the real Secretary of State right now. Marco Rubio is so busy being the fucking, you know, the official archiver or some shit like that. You know, like the dude's pathetic. And you know, before he got confirmed, I was glad because he seemed like the most normal one of the bunch. But goddamn, did he fucking sell his soul? You know, it is, yeah, it's fucking pathetic, man. Carmine says, "What would you say to JD Vance if you saw him at Disneyland? Just like fuck off, you know." Mr. Smith Crashmore says Trump isn't conservative enough for the Republican Party. I don't know if I agree with that. Let's see here. Cameron Hodge says, "What is your opinion on Elon's third? Who will it hurt or help, if anyone?" I think that he is most likely going to be trying to primary Republicans. Um, uh, you know, he uses money to hurt Democrats as well, but I don't believe that that's going to be part of the Democratic primary. I believe it's going to be part of the Republican primaries. And he'll still try to influence elections to help the Republican Party, regardless of whether it's his candidates that win or not. As wealthy as he is, we also have to remember that he is he's not a smart person. He is not a disciplined person. He doesn't have any follow through. He's got the fucking attention span of a hummingbird. So yeah, I don't really believe that this is going to go any further than, you know, like a handful of down ballot races that'll have like the Elon Musk America Party next to a couple of candidates who some of them might win, some of them might lose, but it's going to be the new Tea Party basically. It's not going to be something that lasts. Let's see here. User 68 says, "Can Stephen Miller claim just be giving orders?" I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Orders at Nuremberg style trial. Stephen Miller cannot say that he is just following orders because he's the one giving orders. You know, like there's a lot of very substantive reporting to suggest that he is the shadow attorney general and shadow president of America right now. Maverick says, thoughts on him violating the Emoluments Act and his family with crypto fraud. What Trump did in his first term and what Trump is currently doing regarding keeping his businesses open, allowing investment and bribes from foreign actors, having a cryptocurrency that is allowing unlimited amounts of dark money donations from foreign nationals, potentially bad faith actors that are going to be influencing his governing. It is the most wildly blatant corruption and bribery and grift that I think we have ever seen in American history. And if nothing else, that should be enough to motivate the citizens of this country to unelect every single fucking Republican because they are letting it happen. And if you are a Democrat and you tell me that you're going to use your power in office to add seats to the Supreme Court or fucking impeach these Supreme Court justices who are allowing this to happen, who are empowering Trump, you fucking got my vote, buddy. And you got my fucking $5 a month to try to help get you elected, my guy. Like, it is unfucking believable. It is so far beyond the fucking pale that words fail. You know, god damn, man. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's see here. ADD says propaganda for who? Biden. LOL. It's pretty clean cut from a foreign point of view here. No, it would be propaganda against Biden and the Democrats. It'd be trying to make Democrats and Biden look bad. But again, ADD. I'll look into it. You know. Indestructible Undying says, what about U.S. Iran? I mean, we're talking about two bad actors here. You know, the government of Iran is not great. The Trump administration is not great. It was, you know, I was willing to give Trump his flowers for attempting to have a new nuclear deal, even though he's a fucking idiot for throwing the Obama nuclear deal in the garbage. But then he got fucking dog walked by Netanyahu into bombing Iran like a fucking idiot, you know. Alrighty. Indestructible Undying says, are you taking from Twitch? Yes, I am, but I get a lot more questions on TikTok, so I tend to kind of focus my attention over there. Indestructible Undying, thank you so much for being here. Alright. ADD, not hating America or nothing. That was dead set just a Biden thing connected to info from Burisma, which I'm sure is propaganda too in US. LOL, not out here though. Yeah, ADD, you know, the Burisma shit, the fucking Hunter laptop shit, it's all like part of a stew of, you know, anti-Democratic Party, anti-Biden propaganda. That's, you know, is, yeah, you know, there's very little there. There's very little there. Indestructible Undying says America needs a neutral big party besides these two parties. I completely disagree with that, Indestructible Undying. The Democrat is the party that you want it to be. And it is just the Republican Party that is standing in the way of progress and is doing all this like wildly corrupt and illegal shit. Fog War Productions says, you consider doing AM radio. I'm down. Do you know any AM radio stations that want to pay me to do this? Cameron Hodge says, besides bombing Iran, how could we have prevented Iran nuclear at this point in time? Are you talking about after Trump threw away the nuclear deal that Obama put together? You're talking about afterwards. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's, you know, it's obviously complicated. The Middle East is a fucking quagmire of conflicts and rising tensions. And mostly this is because of stupid shit that happened during the first Trump administration. So what do we do now in order to solve that problem, assuming that we had a not stupid president? Excuse me. I think first thing first is you need to stop sending money and weapons to Israel. Israel has been found guilty of, not Israel, the country, but the people in charge of Israel, Netanyahu, have been found guilty of doing war crimes. And we already have a law in the books here in America that says we are not allowed to do things like send money and weapons to countries that have been found guilty of doing war crimes. So start there, all right? Now you have a little bit more goodwill with the Iranians who are being bombarded by Israel. If you allow Netanyahu to force your hand into bombing Iran because they have bombed Iran, all you are doing is reinforcing the narrative of America and Israel are the evil, secular fascists who are going to come, who are trying to steal Iran from Iranians and steal their oil and, you know, take over the country and do regime change and shit like that. But yeah, you know, I think that we have, the Netanyahu government, the right wing of Israel has been a very bad actor in that region for a long time. And where they should have been the party mostly responsible for, establishing more diplomatic relationships with their neighboring countries, they have instead been throwing elbows and annexing territory and treating Palestinians like second-class citizens and shooting rockets into their other countries and shit like that. Because they were the more powerful country. So I think it's their responsibility. But yeah, I think we have to start there. You know, we have to start reestablishing our relationships to the countries in that area where we are not just, rubber stamping everything that Israel says and does. All right, Andrew J. Rivers says, who is in better health, you or Trump? You know, for the first time in my life, I would say me. Fog War Productions says, your thoughts on the interstate infrastructure projects between California and Fog War Productions. I got to dip out of that one. I'm not knowledgeable enough to make that shit happen. Will Kamala Harris participate as upcoming president candidate in the next election as Indestructible Undying? I'm not sure. You know, she's allowed to do whatever she wants. I'm hopeful that there'll be a lot of great candidates in the primary. Shork says, would you support the U.S. upholding the ICC arrest warrants on Netanyahu? Yes, I would. I think that America should recognize the authority of the ICC. You know, let's see here. Mercy 870 says, if we had a more than two-party system, would you choose a different party? It depends. You know, if we had ranked choice voting and I didn't have to worry about my vote being a spoiler vote for the worst candidates, if the other parties, you know, if I saw them as legitimate, you know, I don't view the Green Party as legitimate. You know, they're not building up any local infrastructure or local support. They're just doing these cash grab, ego-driven spoiler candidate runs for president every 4 years. And there's a lot of, you know, circumstantial evidence to suggest that Jill Stein is an agent of the Russian government. So it's like, yeah, I am not fucking voting Green. I would much rather vote for the Democratic Party, you know. But yeah, you know, if I could vote for first choice, the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, second choice, the centrist wing of the Democratic Party, and then third choice, no other party, then I would. All right. Cameron Hodge says, at what point with an ally should we say that is too extreme, we aren't supporting you? I don't know, man. It's like a case-by-case basis, I guess. I mean, the, you know, human rights as established by the UN, you know, the rules of war as established by the UN, like, that seems to be a pretty good place to start, I think. Let's see here. Some governors are getting flack for immigration. Do you think responsibility of the federal government, or should governors be responsible for that? They are getting a lot of crap. It's a really good question. Let me get back to that. Hold on a second. Mercy 870 says, do you think we'll end up back at a point where politics is treated more professionally eventually? We will, Mercy, if people like me and you do the work to get us there. But we can't just sit on our hands and hope that the Democratic Party is able to lead us there with, you know, the information environment being structured against them and having so many fewer resources than the billionaire class in the Republican Party. You know, we have to do the work of getting politics back to professionalism. All right, so yeah, what was that conversation that do you think that the federal government has more responsibility for immigration? Yeah, I think that immigration is definitely the purview of the federal government, just like legally and constitutionally. Where governors are getting shit for immigration, I think we need to start looking more specifically at what specific governors have done. You know, like DeSantis and you know, what's his name, and Governor Abbott in Texas were, you know, kind of doing human trafficking by busing immigrants to blue states as a way of saying, let's have this be your problem now instead. And you know, it was politically effective in you know, making immigration much more of a front of mind issue for even people in blue states. But yeah, I'm not really sure. I don't see how you can put more blame on governors for immigration, considering how it needs to be a federal project because of how big of a project it is. You know. Alrighty, let's see here. Cameron Hodge says, after Trump, how long will the million MAGA supporters stay so far right? So long as the billionaire class continues pumping them full of propaganda, convincing them that is the move. Excellent questions, everybody. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. This has been great. I got to get out of here. I'm exhausted. I'm at an hour and 10. I usually go a little shorter than this, but my regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. You can check out my schedule for both live streaming and stand-up on my website, jaredberenstein.com. I appreciate all the support you guys give me, whether it is the free kind, like liking and sharing and telling your friends how great my live stream is and telling everybody that they need to check it out. But also, if you want to do the financial support, you can. You don't have to. You can join my Patreon. I got 4 patrons right now. They're dope as hell. You can buy things from my store, jaredberenstein.com/store. The Patreon can also be found there. And you can send gifts on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube and all the various places that I am streaming. But give me a follow, give me a like on all my shit on all my socials and whatnot. I appreciate the support. If there were any questions that you think of later, or that I was not able to get to on this live stream that you want to engage with me on, do not be shy. My DMs are open. You can email me through my website as well. But I'm in this for the long haul. The project of unelecting every Republican from president to dog catcher is not something that I stop doing when I am not doing my live stream. And if you want to be part of that process and you want some direction, fucking hit me up. You can go to my Discord. I've got great suggestions there. I've got great recommendations there. It's another way that you can get in touch with me if you like. But I'm probably on there the least of all the various places. But yeah, I just want you guys to do the work. I want you guys to do the work with me so that we can fucking fix all this shit. So we can have a better fucking country. We don't have to live like this, guys. We don't have to live with fucking barbarism and fucking unconstitutional behavior from our government and fucking, crypto grifting and corruption, the likes of which we have never fucking seen before. We don't have to worry about, whether our food is safe to eat and our water is safe to drink and our air is safe to breathe. Like, we could live in a country where that shit is taken care of. But we have to do the work. We have to do the work to make that happen. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. Carmine says, make a list of the Republicans that need to get voted out. Kind of like an advent calendar, LOL. I like that, but it would need to constantly be updated with, if one Republican leaves and then another Republican gets put in, we'd have to put out a new list every 2 years, All right, everybody. Thanks again for being here. I'm out of here. Be kind to each other. Be kind to yourself. Self-care is part of the work. I will see y'all tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, 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 bye-bye.